Hiya. Oh, a minute. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. There we go. That's better.
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, thank you for letting me interview. Very kind of you.
No problem.
Good. So yeah, let's get started. So where did it all start for you in terms of performing in that? And was it something you always wanted to do?
Well, my whole family is in entertaining, and I don't know how much you already know, but
Yeah.
my uncles are the Chuckle Brothers.
Yeah.
My father and uncle, well, other uncle, are also a double act. They're called the Patton Brothers. So when I was growing up, all four of them were doing shows together, doing Chuckle Visions together. So every year since I can remember, I went to watch Panto and watch summer season and shows with them all in. So we were never far from a show, a Panto. Every kid's holiday, my dad would be away performing, so we'd go and either stay with him or see them. So literally every year since I can remember, about 2 years old, I think it's my first Panto memory, right the way up to when I decided I really want to start looking at doing entertainment as a job. And that was around when I was starting to leave secondary school. I'd always been in amateur dramatic shows, but I decided to do performing arts in sixth form. And as soon as I left sixth form, I went that Christmas into my first Panto, which was Bolton Albert Halls. And then as that was my first professional gig, I'd done a lot of other amateur dramatics, but I loved it so much, I haven't stopped since. So from the moment I left college, I've done Panto every year. This last year would have been my 14th professional Panto, but I mean, I'm sure you'll get onto that later, but all that got cancelled.
So you booked Panto this year?
All my life, basically, I've wanted to do it. I just didn't realise it could be a career path I could do until I was halfway through secondary school when I started properly getting into amateur dramatics. Yeah.
Good. So when you started getting into performing and that, were your uncles and obviously your dad a big influence on you when you sort of putting your act together? Did you sort of nick ideas from them and things like that? Was that sort of something you did?
Yeah. So when I first did my first Panto, and I was a wolf, so it was in Red Riding Hood, and I was playing a villain. So in that year, I was quite lucky. My dad and uncle were in it. So I'd grown up watching them, and it was my first chance to work with them. So that was a thrill, but I didn't have an act as such. Whereas I'd been messing about in college with performing arts, and I had taken ideas, like they do a lot of slapstick, they do a lot of custard pies, and that has influenced me in a big way, because when I do my Haven shows now, or a show I'm doing, or a Panto, I always try and make sure there's some sort of splosh scene in there, or there's a messy scene, because you find a lot of the time now, or I find certainly, that some comedians or some acts don't really like to get messy anymore. Whereas, I've got the makeup on, it's a bit messy, or you find, certainly in pantomime, the dames don't want to get as messy as they used to, because the makeup takes such a long time, or the comics might too much hassle. Not all of them, some of them are great, but I always try and get as messy as possible.
Yeah, I've noticed that in Panto, that when I go and see sort of Pantos now, it's been ages since I've seen like a slosh scene or anything like that. Like my local Panto used to do it, and then in the past sort of 5 years, they've stopped doing it.
Yeah, I think it's, if you mention a slosh scene to someone that hasn't really done a lot of slosh scenes, they think, oh, it's mess. Oh, there's too much mess. I was going to go on the costumes floor. We've got to get someone to clean it up. Whereas, because I've done it all my life, there's certain routines you can do that I will get as messy as, it just goes everywhere, but in a controlled way. So you're never just throwing slosh about. It's on the floor. Someone's going to slip over. If there is, I do a gag. It's the ice cream gag, but I do my own version of it. That, I mean, you might have seen in Panto or online. But you can clean up as you go. So if you get the right sort of foam in your face, say some drops on the floor, I will spot that and kind of clean it up before I go off stage. So it's very rare I'll leave the stage messy, where someone has to like bring on a broom or something like that. And the same with water. So you can do water slosh scenes, but you just need to make sure you've got the right mat down. Or the panto I did year before this one, so I was in Whitley Bay.
Yeah.
We had a massive splosh scene where, I mean, I can send you a picture or a video of it. There was a tube coming down off the side of the stage, and I had to pre-make this foam. But the end of the gag was me getting covered in this, well, it was just foam really, but it was covered, it was all liquid, it was all over my face and everywhere. But we made sure that went into a paddling pool, so all that could just be pulled off at the end. I'm as messy as can be, but that's pulled off at the end, and they carry on with the scene. So as long as you're doing it in a controlled way, it's great. So I make sure, I mean, I don't know if it's a little homage to my family or it's the Chuckles, it's the Pattons, but everything I try and do, I try and put a slosh scene in it. Or, as I said, my Haven show, I'll go and pie someone in the audience, or they'll end up pieing me accidentally. So, that in that way they've influenced. I'm big into slapstick. So if I can't do slosh, I'll try and fall over, so it looks as though I've fallen over, but it looks real at the same time. So
good. So whenever they sort of came to see you in performances and that, was there sort of like an added pressure knowing that obviously your uncles and that were these sort of big children's entertainers? Was it whenever they came in to see you, did you sort of a bit nervous that they were sort of sat in the audience and you wanted to sort of do them proud and that?
So there's two answers really. So when I perform, I will always get nervous just before I go on stage. Even though I've done it for so long, just before that opening night, you're like, oh, is it going to go well? It's not done an audience. So I think everyone will get that. But then when family comes in, you get more nervous. So if my wife's in the audience, if my dad's in the audience, or even if I'm in a show with them, I will get nervous because you obviously want it to go well. And if you're doing a comedy scene and that night happens to be, my dad who's done it for so long, or my uncles or anything like that, then you hope in your mind that it goes really well that night, even though you're doing the same thing. But sometimes the slosh won't come out properly, or sometimes you just want the audience to be a good audience that night. Because you always get audiences that are really good audiences, and then they're less vocal, but they're still enjoying it. You just hope it's perfect on that night for them, even though you're doing the same thing. So in that respect, I get nervous or want it to go well. But as I said, I will always get nervous when any sort of family comes in. But another part of that question is, when I was growing up, certainly when I was growing up and I was at school, Chuckle Vision was really big at the time. It was on TV. My dad was on it. So I'd tell my friends at school, oh, if you watch Tonight at 3:25 or this afternoon, my dad is on that one, because he did quite a lot of episodes. But that was always there. So to someone looking in, they'll go, oh my goodness, your uncles are on the TV. Isn't that weird? And trying to step out of my own life, that would be weird if you suddenly saw your uncles on TV. But because I'd grown up with it so long and I'd watched them in shows, and my dad was always away, and at Panto, when we'd be meeting different stars or names, it was kind of normal to me. So I couldn't really take myself out and go, oh, that's weird seeing them on shows. And the same is when they're in the audience, or when my dad's watching. It's nice, but I'm so used to that it doesn't add on the pressure because they're entertainers themselves or big entertainers. It's just kind of the way I've grown up. And when I'm in the businesses too, I know when I used to go and watch my dad in shows, I'd get a day off from Panto, go and watch him. He'd feel the same. If there's family in, or if I'm in, he'd want it to go well. And, it's just, I think it adds to your performance as well if you are that extra bit nervous.
Yeah. Because you were in a double act for a while yourself, weren't you? Double Trouble, weren't you, for a while?
Yeah. So I've had a few. Altogether in my life, I've had three. But one was at school, just at sixth form. I was only there for 2.5 years, but we, while doing performing arts, we did shows in lunchtime. One day we did a charity gala, and we had to sell out the theatre. It was a Sindon Theatre in Tenterden, but that was nice. We did a little charity show, and we worked in some routines, like versions of the ice cream gag and all that. So that was nice and fun. But then we left college and he went to do his own thing.
Yeah.
And then I had, in 2011 or 2010, 2011, when I'd left college, I was looking for a double act partner. And I had another guy who I did Haven with. We were both fun stars, but we got to do a show once a week during the summer, which was our show. So it was a 45-minute comedy show, double act show. And the good thing about having a double act is because I've got so much content from my uncles, from my dad, and I've always watched double act acts. There's a lot of content there that you can build upon. Whereas I'd never done solo performing, like, for instance, an hour show on my own until year before last, because my last double act was Double Trouble. We did that for a good few years. And then in the end, he wanted to go and be a producer, like full time. So he decided to step away. And then I was left either finding myself another double act partner, so starting all over again. Hi, would anyone like to join me? But then you've got to rehearse for a long time. I've got to meet someone that would want to do that I don't know already. So I decided to give it a go on my own. And when I was doing the Havens, because it was just coming up summer, that first night, it was so much more nerve-wracking. Almost I've never been so nervous doing it on my own, because you suddenly realize you've got no one to turn to. You've got no one to go, oh, that joke didn't land well. That was the audience. You've got no one to, if something goes wrong, it doesn't matter if it goes wrong on my own, but if something goes wrong, you can turn to them and go, oh, so what's next? And have a little joke about it. But I mean, I managed to, as I said, I've done it for just over a year now. And at some point, I probably will do a double act again, because I've got all these jokes. But because I do pantos every year, I can add those jokes in anyway. So I've got them. I know them back to front. I can go to the producer. I've got a version of Busy Bee, if you like. I've got a version, my own version of an ice cream sketch, which is what happened this last year. I said, oh, I knew the producer. I'd worked for him before. I said, oh, I've got a Busy Bee routine. I know it is an old routine, but I've put a spin on it. And he said, great. I took the comic to one side and the other guy to one side. And suddenly, because I knew half the routine, they didn't have to worry as much. Boom, you two have got it. So it works both ways, really. I love the double act, and I've grown up so much, and my whole family's in double acts. But until I find someone that wants to do a double act as much as I do, I'm quite happy at the moment doing it on my own and seeing where it goes. So it's going well so far. So fingers crossed, touch wood.
So are there sort of different challenges when you're performing on your own to performing in a double act? Do you find you find more hurdles when you're performing sort of a solo?
With me, a lot of the content I make up is automatically for a double. So if you're writing a sketch to do with custard pies, you can't stand there and pie yourself in the face. So that was one. It wasn't a challenge, but I had to rework the show that I had for holiday parks to work and to keep content in. That was my style. So I'm very slapstick performer. I'm very, as you said before, I like getting messy. So I had to work in a way to have custard pies and pretend I'm going into the audience, and then I end up falling over on the way down the stairs and end up pieing myself that way. So there's a challenge working in material to your act that is consistent, looks good, rather than, as I said, you can't just stand there and pie yourself in the face and expect everyone to laugh, because you get a titter, but it wouldn't be a belly laugh. Whereas if you fall over accidentally, there you go, you've got the content in. So there is a challenge working in slapstick when you're on your own. But a lot of the acts, like I said, taking it back to my uncles and my dad, acts they don't do anymore, because obviously we've lost Jimmy, my dad's double act partner, and Barry. They wouldn't do that anymore. They can't do that anymore. So I've managed to be able to take that, work on it, add audience members in, and then do the show in a way my own style. So that's quite nice. Until this last year, obviously, where we had COVID. That was nice. So.
Yeah. I had an audition for a Panto last September because I've just graduated with a musical theatre degree. I auditioned for the North Pier Panto, and that was Buttons. Didn't get it, but that when I was auditioning, I thought, well, if I do get it, I'm probably not going to end up doing the show anyway. So it get cancelled, and it did get cancelled.
Is that the one with Jai McDowell? He was in it.
Yeah, that was the one. Yeah,
they've not done it yet, but
no.
Yeah, I've worked with him. I worked with him in a February Panto once. He's a nice guy, so that's nice.
Yeah.
But so the thing with COVID is I had, obviously, as everyone did, as it was March, I had the summer booked. I just booked Panto with a producer where luckily they've just rolled on the contract, so I am with that producer now this Christmas. But as it was coming up summer, I was booked up solid. I had all these Haven gigs. I had Pontins. I had different holiday parks. I had fun days, and then it came about in March, end of March, and we were all like, I said to my wife, I said, oh, at least this wasn't at Christmas, because my personal favorite job of the year is Christmas, and it wouldn't be a Christmas without Panto, because I've done it for 14 years. Before that, I was watching my dad. So I said, it doesn't matter too much if this carries on till summer, because at least it's not Christmas. I said, if it had been a couple of months ago, no good. But then obviously summer came about, they cancelled everything. And then we're like, oh no, well, if it carries on till October, that's annoying, because I got that booked as well. That got cancelled. And then obviously it got closer and closer to Christmas, and everyone had to eventually move online with smaller casts and stream their Pantos. So that was annoying. But in August, they allowed outside performing. So luckily, Pontins got a hold of me and they said, we've got 4 outside big stages. Can you do a couple of weeks tour for us? I said, well, yes, I'll take that. Yeah. But realizing a lot of my act is to do with participation, audience participation. I've got get a couple of people on the stage. There's a big finish where 4 people come on the stage, etc. You couldn't have any volunteers because it was COVID. You couldn't have any volunteers come up on the stage. So I had to suddenly find 25 minutes of extra material that I hadn't practiced as much as I'd want, because you never have reason to practice it, because it works, but you haven't done a big audience. You might have done it at a children's party. I do a lot of children's parties, but not in front of an audience. Luckily it worked. It was great. We did a couple of weeks outside of these venues, and then things started getting shut down again. But so that was a bit of a challenge. And then this year it's the same thing. So I'm getting bookings now for outdoor entertainments in the summer. So it's like walkabout gigs, where you've got to wear a mask or you've got to stay away from people. But as it's walkabout, you can walk about juggling, or you can walk about making balloons and pop, and don't give it to people, but you can do funny things not right next to them. So that's quite good. So fingers crossed we get more outside gigs, and then eventually the holiday parks might come back.
Yeah, good. So who has been your sort of favourite person to perform with in Panto? Celebrity, sort of non-celebrity, either way, but is there anyone you can think of that you quite enjoyed performing with?
Well, 2 really. First was my dad and Uncle Jimmy, the Patton brothers, because I watched them for so long growing up. I knew I wanted to do something like this on stage. And then when I realized I wanted to go into entertainment, I thought, well, if I'm doing Panto, they're always off doing Panto somewhere, and then I'll be somewhere else. So that's a shame. But then my first Panto came around, and it happened to be with them. So that was a thrill, being able to perform with these people that obviously they're related to me, with my dad, but I had watched for so long and laughed at, all the jokes. I did 2 years on the trot with them. I did, first year was a wolf. It was my first Panto. It wasn't really a comedy part. And then the next year we went to Billingham with a different show, same producer, but they said, oh, you did really well then. Would you like to go to Billingham as well? And I got to perform with them again. So the 2 times I've worked with my uncles was the first 2 years, and my dad, the first 2 years I did Panto. And that was just a thrill, being able to see behind the scenes of what they do for a long run. So for a month at Christmas. And then also I did Maidstone, Hazlitt Theatre, My favourite person was H from Steps, Ian Watkins from Steps. He's a really nice guy. We had a dressing room right next to each other. He was just, I liked him growing up as well. He was from Steps. He was always my favourite person. And suddenly the call came in, you're going to be working with Ian from Steps. And I thought, oh my goodness. And he was a genuinely really nice top bloke, you know. There's not been a lot of people that haven't been nice, but a favourite just happens to be him because I liked him from so long growing up. So definitely those two. It was good fun.
So have you noticed, have these, over the years that you've been performing, have sort of the audiences changed over the years? Has their sort of reception towards, you know, what you do and that, has it changed, or has it sort of been virtually the same, like their expectations and that? Or
there's a big, depending on who you ask and what kind of comedy they do, there is a big divide in audiences from, not necessarily from back in the day to today, but North audiences to South audiences. So if you live in the South, apparently audiences are sometimes less vocal, whereas Northern audiences can be more vocal. But the kind of comedy that I specialised in, or I do, would be in slapstick. I've not really found that at all. So I've done Southern pantos, I've done Northern pantos, I've done pantos in Belfast, in Northern Ireland, and because 90% of it is visual, it's the same wherever I go, really. And the same, I suppose, when I first started to now, there's not, the only difference in audiences are children audiences to family audiences. Whereas back in the day to today, or North or South, I've personally found them all the same because of a pie in the face is a pie in the face. It's not going to get old. A fall over that looks like a real fall over, but you've added it in, still gets that same belly laugh reaction to it then say if you're telling jokes. If you're telling jokes, I guess that's when people find different audiences react to different things. You've got to add things, change things. But no, personally, I've not found that. With the children audiences, they will over laugh at everything like kids do. So they will, instead of laugh from the belly, they will just scream laughter. And when you get a full kids audiences, like when you do the ghost gag or when you see a pie in the face, they will just scream their heads off and over laugh because their friends are there, which is great. It's great to react off. But when you get a full house family audience, all that laughter they're my favourite audiences. They are just, you can hear the laughter like a wall coming at you. It's so true. It's so, you know, real. It's just great to perform off of, and then you've got to react off of them, because if they're still laughing, you can't really just skip over that laugh and go to the next thing. You want to get as much laugh as possible without letting it go on for too long before you do the next thing or the next line, or whoever you're working with has got to do the same. You react off the audiences, but that's what I found with audiences over the years anyway.
Yeah. So if you could do any panto, what would it be and who would you do it with?
What would it be? Well, I've done a lot of pantos, but I've never done, looking at the pantos up there, I've got, look, let me show you, I've got them all on the wall up here. Look. Oh, no, right, there we go. So there's 14 of them. But yes, no, I've done a lot of pantos. I've not, what would I want to do again? See, I've not really got a favourite ever panto. It's more, I've got a favourite panto I've been in. But if I was to do one again, it would either be Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or it would be maybe Aladdin, because they've got some good parts for, well, either double acts or a single. Like you could play the policeman character, or in Jack and Goldilocks, there's the silly Billy character. I'd do that. And if money was no object or people was no object, I'd love to work with Lee Evans. I know he's retired now, but I can. He'd be very different in panto, but he was one of my favourite comedians growing up because he was so visual. He's very visual, and he'll fall over and you can see him sweating. Whereas a lot of comics or stand-ups will just do the more, walk up and down the stage, tell the jokes is great, but he was very visual, which is what I am. So I'd like to work with him. Yeah. And also Hugh Jackman, I think would make a great baddie, or I've seen him play baddie in films. I mean, that'd be a heck of a ticket price, but I'd like to work with them. I don't know what parts they'd be, but they'd be two great comics to work with or do an act with, like say Lee Evans doing a splosh scene with me. That'd be ridiculous.
So I want Michael Ball to do Panto at some point. I think Michael Ball.
Panto, yeah.
I think he make a good Dame, because I saw him as Edna in Hairspray, and I think
I saw that. I saw that when it was first Hairspray, when he was first out. Sorry, he was in it, and it was really good at it, wasn't he? Yeah.
Well, Peter Kay. I think Peter Kay would make a good Dame as well. I've heard someone mention a few times, but yeah.
He's very northern. They'd be good in Bolton because obviously he's from Bolton. Albert Hall's. He'd go down well anywhere now because everyone knows him. But he's quite northern, isn't he? So that'd be good. Yeah. But yeah, that's my favourite Panto venue. Well, favourite venue. Everyone's going to say the Palladium. That's the same. I would love to do the Palladium. My dad's done the Palladium in the past for Panto, but back when they were 6 months. But I've been in the Palladium lots. I've stood on the stage, but I've never actually performed there. So, pinnacle. Everyone would love that.
Yeah, good. So how do you sort of go about writing your material and putting your act together? Sort of where do you start and how do you sort of progress, going from the planning stage to actually performing it? So what's your process?
So it depends what I'm doing. So if we just take Panto a minute, all scripts are different. So you might get a script with all the comedy in it. So you'll talk to the producer first when you're getting booked, saying, I'm a comic, I'd love to work with you, or maybe they've approached you and they know kind of who you are because of what you've done in the past. And then they will say, what acts have you got, or what could you do? And I'll say, like I've said to you, I love splosh, I love routines like that. And they'll either get a script with everything already in it, and it'll have the routines set out, and it might just say kitchen routine or splosh routine. Fine, you'll work it out on the day. Or it might say Damian's, or when it says the ice cream gag, you're going to put that in when you get there yourself because you've done it before. So if it's like that, I will make sure I know what to say to the other person so we can write it to their strengths as well, because you don't want to, if I'm doing a routine, I did Busy Bee with Steve Walls from Whitley Bay, the last Panto I did. And you don't want it just to be about you want it to be about him as well, because it's like you're doing a double. So we will work out what we're going to say, how we're going to say it. If he's got a joke, he's going to do it there. So you'll wait for him. So rather than writing it all down beforehand, it's much more about getting up and doing it in the rehearsal room. Whereas if I'm doing or writing for myself for a show at a holiday park or a variety show, I will work out what props I'll need first, or what I could need, because I have a lot of props as well. And then if I find a prop in a shop, I might go, that's a weird looking hat or something, like I've got helicopter hats and all sorts. I might go, what can I do with that? I could do a routine where I come on and it's spinning and there's a fan, or it all depends what you find and where you find it.
Yeah.
At the moment, because I've done it before, I have a set routine that I tend to go to if I was doing a holiday park. If I've done something for a couple of years in a row, so say 2 years in a row, and you're going back to the same places, then you've got to change the material. Because although the people at these places, holiday parks, holiday makers, will be different, you do get the same owners come in, and you don't want them to see you do the same thing over and over. But I very rarely just sit down at a computer and go, right, how can I be funny? It's more about having the prop there, or having a custard pie and go, right, what I already do, how can I change that to make it funny tonight? And when you start performing it, you'll realize that it'll change every night anyway. So it could start as one thing where you fall down the stairs, pie yourself in the face, and you work out it's actually funnier if you don't fall down the stairs, you fall off the stage, or you just trip on your way over, or if you trip over that chair and that chair falls over, that was funny. So keep that in, and then automatically changes anyway. So you find you'll have a different routine by the end of the summer than what you started with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very visual. I have to get up and plan something rather than sit and write. Oh, what can I do for 45 minutes? Like I'm not big into writing. So yeah, very out there.
So
yeah.
one final question. Has anything ever gone wrong on stage, and how do you get yourself out of it? Because I've done shows before when things have gone wrong and I can't get myself out of it.
Always, well, not always, but stuff always will go wrong in live theatre. Where that's the difference between theatre and film. Like if in film something goes wrong, you go, right, stop, we just do that again, make sure it's right. Whereas theatre, if something goes wrong, like you can't just go, oh, stop, so sorry, cry and all this kind of stuff. You have to get on with it. So a couple of occasions where something's gone majorly wrong is I work a lot with cream, custard pies, foam, stuff like that. And there's been 2 occasions over 14 years, luckily just 2, but 2 occasions where either the person pieing me in the face or just me has done something slightly different, and you breathe in at the wrong moment, and you've got a mouth and lungs full of cream, and it's one of those where you can't cough it out, you can't breathe it in, you're like, and that happened this last Christmas, one of them, where I get covered in this foam. I'm stood there dripping away. Halfway through, I'm supposed to do a comedy fall. I just added in a fall. I get up, I say one line and I go off, and then the scene carries on. Well, I said my lines, the foam came down this one evening. There's 2 other people on stage, Steve Walls and Dan, who played the Dame Patsy that year. I'm getting covered. For some reason, I breathe in or foam drips down in the wrong place. I can't do anything. I thought I couldn't cough it out. It felt like 30 seconds of, oh my goodness. So all I could think about in that moment is I can't breathe. So I had to literally just walk off stage. And I've never done that. We've done 40 performances already. One day I suddenly just walk off stage covered in cream, and they're both like, well, they carry on because, they're professionals as well. Whereas I'm in the wings, I'm still in the wings. I'm like, it feels like ages. I mean, it probably wasn't at all, but the stage crew were a bit, like they could see, and one was running for water and all that. And then after however long it was, 45 seconds, a minute, I don't know, I managed to get back to normal. And then I had to get on for the next scene, just go and wipe yourself down and get ready. So that's gone wrong before. And then the other one, which was years before, same thing. I normally get pied in the face. For some reason, the person that was doing it pied me a little bit early, because maybe they either forgot, or I don't know what happened, but my mouth was open. I was breathing in to say a line, right in the face. Happened again. I had to stay on stage that time, but someone passed me a water and it was fine. But there's been a few occasions where I've fallen over on stage, where it's not meant to be, or it's not a funny bit. So you're trying to get away with it. You can't make it into a comedy fall. I fell over once when I was my first panto playing the wolf. I was doing the ghost routine and I was the wolf, but I fell over on stage while I was going off. So I wasn't in the wing yet, fell over. I was just laying on the floor as the wolf, looked at the audience, got up, screamed and went off again. And then the other one was I broke my toe halfway through a performance by kicking a bit of the set, and that really hurt, but obviously you've got to carry on. And the last one I can think of off the top of my head was I did a panto in Leicester where I was playing Wishy Washy, and my entrance was, I was on a big laundry basket, and I got pushed on from the wings. The laundry basket carried on till roughly the middle of the stage, where I would then fall off backwards onto the stage and legs in the air. Funny entrance. So I did that, loads of shows, gone past, fine. One day my mic pack was in the wrong place, right in the middle of my back, like near my coccyx. I don't know where it was, but when I fell on the mic pack, which pushed it obviously into my back. And it was one of those where you're like, oh my goodness, that hurt. But that was my opening routine. It was just me on the stage. So I couldn't just go, wait a minute, oh my goodness. You had to then do your routine, or tears in your eyes. I'm like, oh my goodness. Luckily, it got better throughout the opening monologue. But stuff always will go wrong in live theatre. It's just, you need to just, it doesn't matter if it goes wrong. You can't do anything about it. You've just got to carry on. If you can make a joke out of it, fantastic. It's easy when you're a comic to make jokes out of it. If you're playing a straight prince or princess, if you fall over, everyone's just going to laugh at you with you because they know it's not supposed to happen. But it's a lot easier to get out of things being a comedy character all the time, because they kind of expect that from you, always being silly. Oh, he fell over, and all this. So, yeah, I mean, there's a few costume malfunctions as well, but you've got to pick it up, carry on, get off, or make it a joke.
A few years ago, I was doing a college panto, and I had these two scenes that were really close together. Came off from one scene, had about 30 seconds before the next scene, and somehow I forgot about that next scene. I ended up getting into like a conversation with one, I think my director backstage was getting into a conversation. And I remember hearing these lines being said over the speaker, and I thought, those lines sound familiar. And I realised halfway through the conversation was meant to be on stage. And about 5 minutes into the scene, I just legged it on stage. I was in a comedy duo, and both of us forgot about the scene, and we just legged it on halfway through. And all the cast were just standing there shaking their heads. One was trying not to laugh, and we had to do the whole scene again. So the audience saw the same scene twice in about 5 minutes.
Amazing. I mean, that's happened too. Like, so I've been on stage when someone's supposed to come on and they don't, and you're like, oh, where's Cinderella gone? Everybody, is she around? He's got to make it up. And that, relating back to my dad quickly in the Chuckle show, they did it for about 22 years on stage, let alone Chuckle Vision. One year they added in a fake coming. So my dad would walk on the stage and they'd look at him and they go, why are you here? Have you come on too early? And he goes, yeah, and then walks off again. But they added that in because it got such a big reaction when he accidentally did it one day. They were like, oh, let's keep that in. And then the audience loved it. So when you can add in those things, when you know a routine or show good enough, well enough to be able to add in something that looks like you've mucked up to get a good reaction from the audience, that's great. The only thing is when people try and add them in and it looks like you've added in something, where that's what I always find. If any routine in a panto in a show looks like a routine, you need to kind of change it around. Whereas I'd hate to do a routine that looks like you're just going through the motions with someone. It's got to look enjoyable for you on stage as much as it is enjoyable for them backstage. So if you go onto a show and you realize you hate this routine, doesn't matter you've done it 50 times before, that's the first time they're seeing it. You can change it if you know the person you're working with. So not change it fully, but, change the odd words so you're enjoying it as well. That's what I always find. As long as you're enjoying it, they'll be enjoying it.
Okay, good. Well, I think that's it. I've run out of questions, but thank you for letting me interview you. Enjoyed it. It's been good. Good. So, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It's been enjoyable. Thank you. If I can ever do anything again, just let me know.
I will.
And I hope all goes well.
You too. Yeah. Okay.